This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Helping you find emotional, spiritual, and physical balance. What does your future hold? It's time to find out with Psychic Suzanna.
This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. Now, you can always find us at PsychicSuzanna.com, where you have a list of the shows. You get a feature. KFAB.com, where you can get all the shows listed. You can replay them again and again. The show is centered around you and your life, giving you answers to questions you need, giving you experiences that you can grow from. And today's guest is one of those that I feel you're going to be able to grow with as we recognize the 9/11. We're going to have a couple shows on 9/11. We have someone who is involved in the buildings on 9/11 this week and someone next week. The stories are important. They tell us how to survive even in the middle of unsurvivable thoughts and unsurvivable things. So I would like to welcome to the show Mischelle Rosado. And she is an author of several things. Pursuing Your Destiny is her latest book. But she also had an inspirational story called Will I Recover? I think that's going to be interesting. And then another one called The Recovery. I'd like to talk to her and find out what it was like that day, the day before, what she was thinking as she was in the middle of all of this living hell. And right now we talk to Mischelle Rosado. Hello, Mischelle.
Hi, Susanna. How are you today?
I am totally blessed. I did not crucify your last name, did I?
No, you did not. It was perfect.
I do that a lot. I've got to tell you, Mischelle, you are a beautiful woman. I went to your webpage, and what is your webpage again?
It's MischelleRosado.com.
Okay. And you have this beautiful picture of who you are, and you look so serene. Now, tell me, you were in the 9/11. What building were you in?
I worked for an investment banking firm called Fiduciary Trust, and my office was on the 95th floor of Tower 2.
95th floor of Tower 2. Can you walk us through the steps of that morning, or maybe the day before, into what you experienced that day?
Sure. Well, what I did was I was actually a presentation specialist. I would do presentation booklets, and my hours were 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Unfortunately, though, the night before I was supposed to come in on time the next morning on September 11th, I was asked to do a presentation for the United Nations, and that had me doing work until 7:30 the night before at the office. The portfolio manager that I was working with asked me to come in at 8:30 that next morning to finish up the project. So I was actually up until 1 o'clock the night before, working on the presentation, and I came in to work on Tuesday, September 11th. It was one of the most beautiful days that I've ever seen in New York. Being from Manhattan, we're just surrounded by concrete buildings, concrete floors. It was a very financial type of district, but I still saw a clear sky. And to tell you the truth, Susanna, I was actually going to play hooky that day.
Oh,
important as the project was. The beautiful sky embraced me, and I said, I can just turn around and walk back to the train station and go back home and embrace the day. But I decided, because my job was so important, I went to work. I arrived at my desk around, I'd say, close to 8:40 that morning. When I got there, and, again, I was on the 95th floor, so...
the elevator ride, you have to take an elevator up, correct?
Yes, there were two elevator banks. One that all of them came from the lobby, but there was a main elevator bank on the 78th floor, which then connected to various floors, in the building. So I had to transfer to the one that took me to the 95th floor.
Okay, all right.
So I got off on the 78th floor and then transferred to the one that took me to the 95th floor. And when I arrived on the 95th floor, the first thing I saw was sunlight beaming through most of the north wing of the tower. And that was not unusual because the windows were from the floor to the ceiling. So we were able to see the sunlight from all parts of the city.
Wow.
I walked over to my desk, and I put my briefcase down and my purse on my desk, and not even a minute after I got there, I received a call from my ex-boyfriend, who I had broken up with on August 22nd, so that was less than a month before this happened. He called to see how my day was going, and I was a bit annoyed because I had broken up with him, and I just wanted my peace, but he asked me how my day was going to look, and I said, it's going to be a busy day, so I better start it. I abruptly hung up on him, and as soon as I hung up the phone, I lifted up my briefcase, and then I heard the roar of an airplane engine.
Oh.
And even in a second, I would never think that I would hear an airplane engine, because even as high up as we were, we just would never hear anything like that, and it sounded like a jetliner. The next thing I knew, that plane turned and crashed into Tower 1, which led to whatever heat or energy came into the part of my building, and the windows around us shattered to tiny bits and pieces of glass on the floor. And it sounded like a bomb at first, too, because of the crash. And someone said from the opposite side of the floor, a plane just hit Tower 1, everybody get out of the building.
Wow.
My body shut down for a second. I didn't understand what happened, so I stood there for a moment, and then I grabbed my briefcase, grabbed my purse, and ran towards the elevator. And that was when my coworker Lori ran past me, going to the elevator, and she said, "Come on, let's go." And I said, "Shouldn't we be taking the stairs?" Because in any emergency situation, we all know to never take the elevator. But she said, "No, you're taking the stairs. You're taking the elevator. Come with me." And she grabbed me and she pulled me into the elevator. My coworker Andrew also ran in with us. So we descended to the 90th floor, and the 90th floor was occupied by the legal department and the human resources department. It stopped there because another coworker ran in. So there were 4 of us in this elevator.
Right.
We looked outside the elevator door, and we saw people on their cell phones crying. We saw people screaming. They were running around in complete chaos. Nobody knew what was going on. Nobody else got into the elevator, even though we were just calling out to them, "Somebody get into the elevator." Nobody else did. And so we inevitably let the elevator door close. So
that had to be hard alone, to see this drama,
was hard alone.
and just to have them have the elevator and them not come to it. That must have been miserable. We're going to continue on with the story, and then we'll take our break. So finish the story for us, please.
So we descended onto the 78th floor, which I said was the main elevator bank for the tower. As soon as we descended, we saw people trying to get into all the elevators, pushing and shoving their way in. All of the elevator doors were open as if people were just leaving them open for people to go in there. And Lori and I shoved our way into the first elevator that we saw, which was directly across from us. I saw Andrew go to another elevator, so we pushed our way in until a woman behind us said, "No more people, no more people." All of a sudden, the elevator door closed. I don't know how many people were in the elevator with us, but it usually takes about 8 minutes to get down from the 95th floor down to the lobby, but it felt like 15, 20 minutes.
I bet it. I did.
We couldn't believe it, what was going on. I was shaking, and we got down to the lobby finally, and I saw Lori leave. She went to the Liberty side, and I just walked out into the lobby, and to the left of me I saw a burning piece of steel on the ground. There were office papers. There were tattered clothing. There were people screaming. And policemen and firemen were just besides themselves. They didn't know what was going on either.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of my journey.
Now, I've been in Manhattan, so once you went out of the building, tell me about that and how you got home. Let's finish the first day.
Well, the first thing I did as soon as I got into the lobby was I called my manager, Joni, who coincidentally had Tuesdays off, so it was her day off that day. So I called her immediately, and she answered the phone, and I said, Joni, I think something happened at Tower 1. And she said, what are you talking about? She turned on the TV, and she said, oh, my God, a plane hit the World Trade Center. It hit Tower 1. And I said, should I go back upstairs? Because I actually saw people walking back into the elevator.
Oh, my God, really? Oh.
Yes.
Oh, my God, okay.
She said, no. She said, no. You go home, and you call me as soon as you get home. So that's what I did. I closed my phone. I walked towards the rear entrance of the World Trade Center. That's when I saw Andrew. And as soon as we walked out of the building, we were not even across the street, we heard another airplane engine.
Oh.
And I did not look. I heard it, and all of a sudden I heard a big boom, and all of a sudden I felt heat coming from all angles. People, it was complete pandemonium. People were just running around, running into people, and I was standing next to a steel barricade, and someone knocked me into it. I fell to the ground. Andrew picked me up. I said, what do we do? And that's when I looked up, and I started seeing people descend from the tower.
Oh, okay.
My body completely shut down.
I can't. I bet you're on automatic here. I mean,
I was.
Okay, go ahead. Finish. How did you get home? I mean, you're seeing people jumping from the towers. Tell me what happened next.
Well, Andrew said the first thing we do, let's go to the South Street Seaport. It's the best place for now. I had no idea why he would say the South Street Seaport. It was just a pier by the water. And so I said, okay, let's go. And we walked calmly to the South Street Seaport.
Wow.
Both of us were such in shock. Everybody else was running around. He and I just decided, and he just had knee surgery, so he was hobbling. I was walking in my black high-heeled shoes.
Right.
So,
yeah, you're in Manhattan.
I was a businesswoman, so we walk over, and then we got there. We needed to get some phone service, and that's when Andrew tried to get on the phone with his family. And we waited for a few minutes, and all of a sudden, the South Tower started to crumble.
Oh.
And that's when I saw people running toward the water, because from the distance, it looked like the tower was going to topple on most of downtown Manhattan.
Oh.
And when we saw the collapse, I thought that my body went on automatic, but I looked up and I didn't see a place where I worked any longer. And Andrew and I decided to just start walking home. And that's when we started walking up the FDR Drive, which was a highway, but it was closed down. Mm-hmm. And we walked all the way from downtown Manhattan to Midtown, which is definitely quite a few miles.
In high heels, no less. Yes. Yeah.
In high heels, and a blouse and a skirt.
Right.
No, we had nothing. And we got up to 34th or 35th and 3rd Avenue, and Andrew was able to get home by ferry, and I was able to get home by cab. Wow.
We're going to take a little break, and then we're going to come back and talk a few more minutes with Mischelle. Phenomenal story from nominal life that she's built in the middle of all the tragedy that she's been through on 9/11. There's a favorite saying I have. I never worry about those who die, because those who die are in the arms of God. And one of the sayings I always quote is that death is like taking off a tight pair of shoes. Many took off their shoes that day and were free. But the horror of the living. But we'll be back with Mischelle, who wrote the book Pursuing Your Destiny. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna, 1110 KFAB. Stay tuned for more details. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. You can always find us at PsychicSuzanna.com. You can get a free question. You can find out where I'm at. Or you can go to KFAB.com. Then you find all the stories. You might want to listen to this one a little bit more. Today we are commemorating September 11th. We are honoring September 11th as one of our great lessons and one of our learning. And today with us we have Mischelle Rosado. I did it wrong again, didn't I, Mischelle?
No, you didn't.
I did? Okay. We decided we liked your cruise name, Dale. So you actually, we heard the story of how you got down, you went to the pier. You know, the walk in Black Hills, high heels, was about 15 blocks, wasn't it, if I recall?
It felt like about 10 miles.
I bet it did. I bet everything that day felt horrible. But once you got home, tell me about who was there, what happened.
Well, I actually had an apartment in Manhattan at the time, but I knew that someone at my mother's house would be home, whether it be my stepfather or my brother. My mother actually worked 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center, so she was downtown at the time that the towers were hit, so I knew that somehow she knew that I was okay. Mm-hmm. But when I got home the cab took me home, and when I entered my mother's apartment, my brother was standing there. And the story about my brother is he actually didn't go to work. He didn't go to school that day. He was attending college. My best friend called him at 10:30, and she said, "Eric, where's your sister?" And he said, "I don't know, she's at work." And he had no idea. He turned on the TV and he saw the South Tower collapse, and the first thing he thought about was how is he going to take care of my mother and plan my funeral. Oh. So I arrived home at 3 o'clock that afternoon, and I was welcomed with open arms. Oh, I can imagine.
And as you're talking about this, I'm feeling the sensitivity and the love that must be there when he saw you. Quite an interesting thing. And tell me about your mother.
It was coincidentally, she came home at 3:15. So she came home only 15 minutes after I came home, and she embraced me, but she already knew that I was okay.
Marvelous.
She had a feeling.
Marvelous. And did you sit in front of the TV and keep watching the drama, or how did you begin the healing? Just begin the healing.
I stayed at my mother's house the entire time. I never went back to my apartment, and I spent the first 2 weeks just sitting there in my brother's room, just watching the footage over and over and over again, as if I was supposed to see something different. And unfortunately, I just brought myself to a place of darkness, because I just kept hearing more stories about friends of mine who were missing, and seeing their family members run up to the anchor people on site and showing pictures of their daughters and their sons or their sisters and saying, "I have not seen them. Please tell me where they are." It was pretty. I think that was pretty much the darkest time for me, is just sitting there over and over again and watching and crying.
We're going to stop the conversation, because how do you come from this darkest time? I'm going to keep you on, and we'll come back at the top of the hour. The lesson I learned from 9/11 is I saw all that paperwork that people treasure, and all that paperwork on the floor that people were treasuring and, keeping secret and all of that, and none of that mattered. What really mattered was life and peace. And those two things were what we're trying to find with this September 11th commemoration. And this is Mischelle Rosado. I did good. Who wrote the book Pursuing Your Destiny. We'll come back with her, and we're going to talk about the healing that she has done and how she can help us heal from our terrors. As she lived through one, we'll move through to the next. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB.
Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. She knew I was going to say that.
Right where you need to be. This is Life with Psychic Suzanna on 1110 KFAB. We're coming back right after the 8 o'clock hour, and Mischelle is going to tell us how she healed from 9/11. Have you healed? This is one of those days that broke our innocence. We're no longer safe and secure as we always thought we were in America. You know, people come from different directions and different thought patterns and different ideas, and we encountered ugliness. We encountered anger. We encountered fear. We encountered hate that we had no idea was out there. Most of us didn't. We lived in our life and we were secure with what was going on. I want you to know, embrace your feelings of that day. And for the next, this month, we're going to be talking next week. We're talking to someone who was on 9/11, and she had to be put in a coma for 6 weeks because the burns were so bad. She wrote a book called Unmeasured Strength. We'll be talking to her next week. And then we'll be talking to a doctor to talk to us about how do we forgive? Really, seriously, how do you forgive once you're being attacked? I mean, it's fathomless for me sometimes to be able to say, I forgive you for having an idea that is so harmful to so many. I mean, this was an idea that set us off our center. I forgive you. And so we'll have Dr. Yonder on next week. He'll be telling us how to understand and how to forgive in this great area that we need to be working on. And again, we have Unmeasured Strength. She was put in a coma for 6 weeks. I mean, we're talking to people who experienced the horror and came back. And they will give us lessons on how we can heal our life from the tragedies in our life, from the tragedies of death of our loved ones, from the tragedy of death of being hurt. This is 1110 KFAB, and this is the station where you find the information, the last-minute information. Notice how we covered it on 9/11? You didn't have to guess where to turn. You turned to 1110 KFAB. Yes,